Number 1. Math Bros Calculators. The tools that you can find on this website are exceptionally important, at least in terms of budgeting and planning. What you'll find here are a lot of different tools, but the main two ones I would like to focus on are the Star Force Calculator and the Cuban Calculator. These tools are going to allow you to plan and budget a lot better. You'll be able to see if something you want to get, let's say 2-line crit damage with a main stat on your gloves, is realistic within your budget. Of course, you can always get lucky, and these are just estimates, but they are incredibly good estimates to have. There are of course other very useful tools on this website. You can find things like a WSE calculator, which is weapon secondary emblem. This allows you to see how optimal your potential lines are on those 3 equipment items. You can also do the same thing with hyperstats. All of these tools are exceptionally easy and straightforward to use, so I recommend you playing around with them and finding out which ones are useful for you. Number 2. Individual class discords. Yes, I know, another obvious one that most of you probably already use, but a very important one nonetheless. If you're a newer player, perhaps you just found out what class you would like to main or start investing in. Well, the first thing you should do is join that class's Discord, where you will find tons of helpful people, but not only that, written guides that are likely going to answer all the questions you already have. Whether that be node priority, hexamatrix stuff, your inner ability, you will likely find it all there, as well as much more information. In many cases, you'll also be able to find really good maps on where to level that are tailored towards that class. But if you would like to learn where to level yourself, let's go into number 3. Maple Maps, an absolute godsend of a website. Not only is this good for just planning out routes in a map, but the most useful feature to me is finding the maps that have the maximum amount of spawn rate for any given region. These are generally the maps you would like to target. Then it's just a matter of actually going into those maps and seeing if you can work it out properly with your class and find a good rotation. My own personal main use of this website is simply this graph, where I can go to certain regions, let's say Limina, and then sort it by mobs per hour and go to the highest maps. Then I just figure out if I can do any of those. And if not, then I go down and down and down until I find a map that I'm comfortable with. Sometimes you may just want a smaller map that has a less spawn rate, but it's really lazy to do. It's entirely up to you, but this is how you should learn to figure out where to level for yourself. Another neat little thing is you can also play around on the little rotation editor and see how big certain classes' hitboxes are. That's a kind of nice tool to have. Number 4, Strategy Wiki. Yes, just a wiki. Well, MapleStory has the regular wiki, which has a lot of good useful information on it as well, but Strategy Wiki goes really in-depth on a lot of different mechanics in MapleStory. For example, one thing that I go to this website for all the time is to see how good a certain flame is. Not a flame score. Specifically, let's say I'm making a new boss mule and I'm flaming my new Absolab weapon. Well, I don't exactly know what a tier 6 flame attack value is, so I go to Strategy Wiki, and of course they have a whole page dedicated to flame stats. I go down, find Absolab weapons, and for every tier of attack Absolab weapons have, they show each tier of a flame for the attack value. So much good information is on this website. Want to know a bunch of stuff about inner ability, how much each stat can roll at each rarity? They got that. Want to know the inner workings of a lot of the formulas in MapleStory that make our characters strong? You got that info there. If you want to know something, try Googling it and then add Strategy Wiki MapleStory onto it, and you'll probably find an article for it. Number 5, the Legion Solver. There's really not a lot I can say about the Legion Solver other than that it is simply one of the best tools we have access to. Some of you that might be watching this may not have a Legion yet. You might not have much Legion to work with, so you may think, well, what do you need a solver for? Well, when you have about 40-something blocks in this thing, and they're constantly changing and growing, it's a pain in the ass to constantly redo this thing. So simply punch in the classes you have, then the Legion Solver will work its magic and give you a perfect, beautiful grid that you will proceed to f up many times and have to redo over and over again. So thank God we have something like the Legion Solver to make it so we don't have to do that. And if I may offer a little bit of advice on how to use this thing, not instructions, just a tip. Try to build a base on this thing out of characters that you know are probably never going to change, that you will never play again, like a 0. And that way you won't have to change so much of your grid. You'll just be able to work things around as things level up. Number 6, the character map on Windows. As we all know, naming your character in MapleStory is one of the most challenging things you will ever experience. One of the common ways we get around that, aside from using lowercase I or capital I's as lowercase l's and lowercase l's as capital I's, is to put funky little symbols and accents over letters to actually give us a name that looks like what we want, but it's not really the name we want. In comes the character map. There are tons of websites that will show you all of these things, but Windows has one built in. And more importantly, when the game makes you type your name for so many different things to claim, like arcane symbols and weird event rewards and stuff, you'll have have it easily able to copy and paste from this thing. However, I would also recommend that if you do use some of these, it might just be better to copy and paste your name into a little notepad file or on a sticky note somewhere on your computer so you can always just copy paste it in the game. Number 7, MapleStory Simulator, one of the oldest tools in the MapleStory handbook, which also means that some of you newer players may not be aware this thing even exists. The purpose of MapleStory Simulator is, well, to simulate the way your character looks. Whether or not you want to test it for how certain things look on your characters, maybe things that are not in the surprise style box right now, but you know they exist, the site has a lot of stuff on it. It's also good if you want to make animations of your character, or maybe you just want a clean cutout of your character. It'll let you download sprite sheets, clean PNGs. It is a lovely tool to have if you're into this kind of thing, and I think a lot of you probably are in some way or another. Number 8, MapleScouter. MapleScouter, simply put, is probably the single best endgame tool that we have in MapleStory. And if you're a solo player like I am, something like this is incredibly important because what it offers is it allows you to put in a detailed sheet of your character's information, and then it will pump out numbers on how effectively you will match up against basically every boss in the game. This tool is significantly more complicated than every other tool I've mentioned so far, but Iceling Guns has a lovely video explaining on how to use it as well as common errors you may face. It is a little bit of a pain to set up in the first place, especially as a GMS player, but I promise you, if you can get through it and you can get it working, it is worth the effort. Once you actually get your information in correctly and get to the boss screen, there is a detailed information thing down at the bottom where you can actually type in changes to your stats and see exactly how certain upgrades may affect you, which is wonderful when you're comparing flames on equipment or looking to maybe change your hyper stats around, or maybe just you want to see how worth it farming for a specific familiar may be. The effectiveness of this tool is really only limited by how much you're willing to use it and how, and whether or not you actually keep it updated, which I highly recommend you do. This has got to be probably the best measure of power that we have, other than, just going into a boss and fighting it yourself. Number 9, the Node Solver. This one is almost kind of an honorable mention simply because we are getting a quality of life feature that allows us to craft trio nodes of our choice, which means finding perfect trio nodes won't be nearly as much of a pain in the ass as it is right now. However, even that quality of life feature will not be making the node solver completely useless, because you see, if you open like 500 nodes, there's a good chance you probably open perfect trio nodes, but finding that perfect trio in a mess of nodes can sometimes be a little bit of a challenge. And that's when the node solver will still be useful, and it will save you some node shards, dust, whatever you want to call it. The website for the node solver has everything you need to know about how to use it, and it is a really good tool, and I think even after the quality of life, you probably will still find use for it. Number 10, something that I made myself, my own personal boss mule tracker. Now what I use this thing for is to simply just visualize how my boss mules are going, how many I have, and what progress they can do, because I have a lot of boss mules. I have a little bit of a problem. They're fun, but you can also use this as a checklist if you want, constantly checking things off and unchecking them as you do them each week. However you use this is up to you. All you need to do to customize it to yourself is edit the class names at the top. I mean, you can do whatever you want to, and after you copy it into your own, you can also add the bosses like Limbo and stuff that I've been too lazy to add, but this mostly is for boss mules. If you have boss mules that are that strong, good for you, but I certainly don't. With that, that is everything I have for you today. There are certainly a lot of other useful tools in the MapleStory community. These are just 10 of my own personal picks meant to be in a short, concise video. If you have something you feel is missing from this list, feel free to share it in the comments below. This was my own personal pick, and of course, I don't know everything that is out there, so maybe you have something to show me as well.